All right, let's talk about a battlefield that has no borders, a weapon that makes absolutely no sound, and a war that's fought entirely inside our own minds. Yep, we are talking about psychological warfare.
So let's start with a really basic question. How do you win a war? I mean, think about it for a second. When you hear that word war, what's the first image that pops into your head?
I'm willing to bet it's something like soldiers, right? Weapons, tanks, raw physical force. And for most of history, you'd be spot on. Winning was all about physical dominance. Bigger armies, more ships, stronger air forces. It was all about tangible strength on a real, physical battlefield.
But here's a thought. What if the most important battlefield wasn't actually a physical place? What if winning had nothing to do with who has the biggest bombs, and everything to do with who controls the story, who controls morale, who controls the simple will to keep fighting?
So to really get our heads around how this battle for the mind is fought, we're going to crack open a classic. It's a foundational text from way back in the mid-20th century called, you guessed it, Psychological Warfare by a guy named Paul Linebarger.
Okay, so let's get into a definition. What is psychological warfare? Because as Linebarger points out, it is way, way more than just propaganda or, dropping leaflets out of an airplane. It's a much deeper, more complex game.
So here's the core idea from Linebarger. It's all about using specific tactics to crush the enemy's morale, to influence what entire populations think, and to achieve military goals. And here's the kicker. A lot of the time, this happens without any direct combat. It's about winning the war before a single shot is even fired. Think about that.
And Linebarger really hammers this home. This isn't some separate phase of a war. It's not like, okay, now we do the psychological part. Nope. It's happening before the fighting starts, while it's going on, and even long after the treaties are signed. And because you're dealing with ideas, with feelings, there are no clean front lines. The boundaries are just completely blurred.
All right, so you might be thinking this is all, a modern thing, something cooked up in the 20th century. But the truth? This strategy is as old as conflict itself.
Linebarger makes a really fantastic point about this. He says, look, the term psychological warfare might be pretty new, but the tactics, the actual principles behind it, they're ancient. They've been a part of human conflict pretty much forever.
And he gives a perfect example. He brings up the ancient story of Gideon and his campaign against the Midianites. This is a classic case study in psychological manipulation.
See, Gideon's army was tiny. He was massively, hopelessly outnumbered. If he tried to fight a straight-up physical battle, it would have been a total disaster. So, he did it. Instead of relying on brute force, he decided to play a different game. He relied on perception.
What'd he do? He had his men use trumpets and torches in the middle of the night. It created total chaos, confusion, and panic. Suddenly, his tiny little force sounded and looked like a massive, terrifying army. The Midianites' morale just completely collapsed. They were basically defeated by their own fear before the real fight could even start. Brilliant, right?
Okay, so if this is a type of war, what's the endgame? What are the strategic objectives? I mean, how do you win a battle for the mind?
Well, Linebarger lays it out pretty clearly. Step 1. You want to make the enemy soldiers doubt everything. Make them question their cause, their leaders, even their own chances of making it home alive. Step 2. You've got to shape what civilians think. Not just your own, but theirs too, and anyone who's sitting on the sidelines. And the ultimate goal of all this? To get what you want with a lot less bloodshed, a lot less physical destruction. So let's address the elephant in the room. This book is from decades ago, right? We live in a world of cyber warfare, drones, and all sorts of high-tech stuff. So why on earth are we still talking about it? Why does it still matter so much?
Well, the summary of the book itself really hits the nail on the head. It says, Linebarger's work has a significant impact on the outcomes of conflicts and is still super relevant in modern military doctrine. Basically, this isn't some dusty history lesson. It's a core text, something that's still considered absolutely essential for understanding modern strategy.
But let's be honest, this book is not exactly a day at the beach. It's known for being pretty tough to get through. In fact, Project Gutenberg scores its reading ease at a college level. So yeah, we're talking about a dense, serious academic work here.
And yet, check this out. Despite being this difficult old academic text, it was downloaded more than 3,200 times in the last 30 days. And that's just from one single source. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about how relevant this book still is, I don't know what will.
Because here's the bottom line. The battle for the mind is just as real today as it was in the 20th century, or in Gideon's time for that matter. Sure, the tools have changed. We've gone from trumpets and torches to social media algorithms. But the fundamental idea, it's exactly the same. The struggle over belief, over morale, over the will to fight, that is still a huge, huge part of any conflict.
And that kind of leaves us with one final big question to chew on. In our age, an age of constant information, and, let's be real, disinformation, does this battlefield ever go quiet? Can it? Where does it even begin? And where does it end?